Hello and welcome to our webinar, Using Agile in Your Fundraising Team. Thank you for attending. Today, we are very honored to have Diane Leonard joining us as our featured speaker. Diane has been a long time valued partner for Foundant, and we have been looking forward to this opportunity to have her share her Agile experience with all of you on our community and tell us how it can be applied to fundraising. We've been utilizing, Agile methodologies in many of our internal processes here at Foundant, and it just even beyond software development, and it has been transformational. So I am looking forward to having her share this methodology with you as well. My name is Tammy Tilsey, and I will be facilitating today's webinar. If this is the first Foundant webinar you've attended, thank you for joining us. We partner with thought leaders like Diane and trainers to bring you these monthly educational webinars. And we look to provide timely educational content at no cost. We partner with our partners in that. The agenda is simple. We tell you briefly who Foundant is, and then we'll turn the time over to our guests with time for questions at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. Foundant's mission is to maximize the impact of the philanthropic community, and these webinars are one of the ways that we do that. Learning new skills, acquiring new tools, gaining more knowledge, all of this can help you be better at your job, be more efficient and effective, which then in turn benefits the causes you all support. So similarly, Foundant provides software that helps simplify and improve the philanthropic process on both sides. We have product lines for grant makers, grant seekers, community foundations, scholarship providers, and all of these audience. We have software solutions for helping them meet and overcome challenges. Speaking of grant seekers, that is the product line that's sponsoring today's webinar at Foundant. And GrantHub helps you research, find new grants, manage those opportunities, deadlines, files, etc. So if you're ever looking to become more organized with your grant management or fundraising efforts, please reach out, check out what we have. But that's all I want to say about that. So GPCI, the Grant Professional Certification Institute, we are an accepted education partner with GPCI, and this content has been approved for one education point to your Grant Professional Certified credential. And Diane is also a GPC. So if you want to learn more about what it takes to become a GPC or more about the accepted education program, we encourage you to go out to grantcredential.org to learn more. Little bit of housekeeping before we get going here. We are using Zoom. You may notice that we do have closed caption enabled. If that's something that's distracting to you, you could turn it off. If you want to use it more and increase the font size, the settings are under closed caption. So we've enabled that for your use and accessibility today. We also will be using Q&A. Anytime you have a question, go ahead and throw it into our question and answer. We will answer it as we get to it, or also again at the end. So throw them in at any time, and then we have an active chat going. So the key with the chat is to switch the drop down to all panelists and attendees if you want your comments to be seen by everyone. If you are not using the chat, a little tip would be to open it up and just move it off to the side of your screen so that it doesn't continue blinking that there's new chat. So that's the technology. One last thing I want to mention, we often don't get to every question that's asked, or there may be more questions that come up as you start to use what you've learned today. So Foundant has another way that we are looking to benefit our community, and that is by having a community discussion, a place where you can network. So join the discussion, community.foundant.com. If you're not already a member, it's just really brief. You are asked to put in your first name, last name, And you will look under grant seekers and nonprofits for the discussion, today's discussion, which we will house there. And I'll chat this out as soon as I turn the time over to Diane. So if you feel free to introduce yourself and request some fun badges and network with your peers. So Diane, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to stop my share and allow you to share your screen here. Learning Agile and how it can transform the way you do your work is something that we're excited about, and looking forward to you sharing your tips and best practices with us today.
Thank you, Tammy, and thank you to the whole Foundant and Grant Hub team for having me here today. We are an interesting bunch, the Grant Hub, the D.H. Leonard, and Agile and nonprofit teams, because we share both the love for grants and the love for Agile. And so you put us together in a Zoom room and all sorts of things happen, all good things. But it is quite the group when you put us together. And so I'm thrilled that I get to talk to you today about how it is that you could consider using an Agile framework in your fundraising teams. Just a little bit about me. I see some friendly names in the participant group. So hello, friends. To those that I haven't met, though, I'm so thrilled you're here and to get to meet you. So here's just a little bit about me. I am a Scrum trainer by Scrum Inc., which means I love to talk about the Scrum framework, about Agile values, Agile principles. Absolutely happy and always excited to do so. But I've spent my entire career in the nonprofit field, entire career, all 20 years of it. First as a grant maker, then as an employee working on grants, and as a consultant now for a long time, supporting nonprofits of all shapes and sizes in their grant seeking efforts, their grant readiness efforts. And the tie that binds these conversations and my background together is that grant professionals, fundraising professionals, well, we're usually project managers as well. And so in trying to think about different ways to manage these big projects, trying to think about organizational behavior and grant readiness conversations, we stumbled basically into Agile and Scrum. And I thought, oh, this makes a lot of sense for our work. And I'm going to show you how much of this is already in place. So I'm thrilled to be able to take my two loves, grants and Agile, or you could say nonprofits and Agile, or fundraising and Agile, to bring those together in a conversation with you today. So as we look at the agenda, I want to talk about how we can focus on impact, how we can focus on happiness, and give you some tactical ideas for how you can adopt bits of an Agile methodology into your work. This is a 1-hour webinar. We're not going to be able to get deep into, we're not going to credential you in a framework, but give you some ideas, some inspiration, some things to try. And I've got a Q&A formally at the end. The Foundant team will help make sure that we get to as many of the questions in your Q&A channel as possible. But I've got it open and I can see what you're asking in the Q&A. If you open that questions and answers section and you've got a question during the session, go ahead and put it in. If I can, I'm going to answer it right while we're in a particular topic. There's not a reason that you need to hold your questions for a parking lot. So that's one thing that just in terms of how we can make sure that we get to as many of your questions as possible, feel free to drop them in at any point. Well, when we think about Agile and Scrum, I'm wondering how many of you know a little bit about either. What I'd love to have you do, I'm going to use the chat box just a few times, and it is optional. Please don't feel pressured that you have to be in there, but it's a quick way that I can check in with you. What I would like to know is how many of you would say you know at least a little bit. You're dangerously knowledgeable about Agile or Scrum. If you do, put your hand up in that chat box. Give me a Y for yes. If you're like, nope, I'm brand new, I'm here to learn, I know nothing, give me an N. That'll give me a really quick indicator. I'm watching all of your answers. All right. Ooh, I just saw I saw a CSM go by, credentialed Scrum Master, certified Scrum Master. Fantastic. We've got a lot of folks that are saying, I know nothing. I'm here to learn. Yes. Ooh, another CSM. I've seen at least 3. Wonderful. Those are folks that have gone deep in their learning about Scrum. That's fantastic. Well, what I would like to do, because I had a feeling that there were many that were at least dangerously knowledgeable, some that are at a great level of learning, but a lot of you today are at that initial stage where I was. You're like, so when we talk about Agile, what do we mean? For those of you that are dangerously knowledgeable or are all the way at that credentialed level, give me just a second. We're going to do a few basic ground informational type things to give us some building blocks so we can dig in on using this in fundraising teams. So what is Agile? Well, Agile, capital A. What we're really talking about is a mindset. It is a way that teams can work together. We're not talking about the practical interactions. We're not talking about a specific framework. Rather, Agile, it's a big umbrella, and under it are numerous frameworks. What I want to have you think about is the 4 values that are included in the Agile Manifesto. You can go read the whole Agile Manifesto at agilemanifesto.org. It's accessible, it's international in its usage and acceptance, and it's great to reference if you're trying to understand what does it mean if we say our team is Agile, if we say our organization is Agile. The 4 values that you can see on the screen, the point of them is what is in green on the left is what we value more as teams than what is in blue on the right. It doesn't mean that we stop doing or we discount or delete the things that are in blue, but we value those that are in green more. Now, of the 4, there is one that honestly has always been the one that stood out to me as where nonprofits really shine. And then the pandemic happened. It started. And what did we see in nonprofits and charities around the world? We saw value number 4 highlighted on a daily basis. So nonprofits or charities that perhaps never would have called themselves Agile all of a sudden realized this is a label that applies to us. So that 4th value, responding to change over following a plan. You're right. Nonprofits, charities have strategic plans, and they are still incredibly important guiding documents that give us our product vision and goal that our teams will use, that we will work to achieve together. But when life happens, as we've seen over the last 14 months, when life happens, nonprofits are showing how agile they are in their approach to meeting their mission, serving their community. That is what I think Agile is all about. As a nonprofit professional, do we have a mindset that we can respond to change as a team as we're thinking about our work versus only following the plan? Honestly, you know what? Take a moment, pat yourselves on the back for how you in your own work have been agile, especially over this last year and a half. I have no doubt that each of you deserves that pat on the back. But if that's what Agile is, what is Scrum? Scrum is one of the specific frameworks that falls under the Agile umbrella. Scrum is a framework that teams use that allow them to have a uniform way that they approach doing work, committing to work, thinking about how will they get from this idea to implementation. So the Scrum guide, it's like the rule book. It's 13 pages. It's a PDF. You can download it for free online in numerous languages. You'll find it at scrumguides.org. So it's a good way to have it on hand or download it to your computer, and you will know all the rules of Scrum. It's pretty basic. It looks, the first time you read it, it's like learning a new board game, right? Sometimes I open those instructions in a new board game and I'm like, oh my gosh, which people am I moving and when on the board? What cards do I need? I get it. The first time you read it, it's a lot. But it's pretty basic. It boils down to 3 roles in a Scrum team, 5 events, and 3 artifacts. So 3 visual things related to our work. Good news, you don't need to memorize or know the framework for today's conversation, but I want to give you, for those of you that are new to talking about Agile and Scrum, I want to give you just a little bit of information so that you can decide if you want to learn more later. Now that we've got a little bit of background behind us, the first thing I said we were going to talk about today was increasing the impact of your fundraising efforts. But to do so, that's a loaded heading, isn't it? I need to say, you're all doing amazing work. Your teams, your plates are full. I get it. You are doing special events. You're doing annual appeals. You're managing the bequests. You're writing grants. You're doing all the things. And you're doing a wonderful job. I truly believe that. The issue is that there are so many competing priorities and there are only so many hours in the workday. So how can you look at all the things and decide as a team which are the most valuable things that we can do? That's the priority conversation we want you to have. And by having it, not by changing your skills, you're right, we're always learning, but it's not about changing your skills. It's not about saying, well, should we do more special events or should we do more letters? We're not trying to make that judgment here either, but rather, how can we give you support so that as a team, you can decide what is the top priority, what brings the most value so that we can get to more impact. That's what we want to try and do together. As we walk through today's conversation, I'm going to reference a few other case studies and examples and stories. And some of them you can actually go watch an interview about at our YouTube channel. So the first one that I want to highlight for you is with a well-known colleague in the Association of Fundraising Professional Circle. Some of you might know her. Alice Ferris is the founding partner of Goalbusters Consulting. And Alice did, well, I adore Alice. We have a lot of fun, like thinking about travel and the different ways that we can help nonprofits learn and support teams. And what was so fun about this one specific conversation I had with Alice was in thinking about how she supported a capital campaign team for the Lowell Observatory by using some of the Scrum framework. And so as we're sharing these different ideas, you might go, that's like our team. Excellent. We're trying to help you think about where can you find inspiration? Where can you find a story that is sort of like your team so that you could think about trying it out yourself? So if you've ever thought about capital campaigns, if that's part of your work or it's part of where you're headed, you definitely might want to read the interview with Alice or watch the video because that'll give you a different perspective. Here today, we're talking some basics. This is a real life example for you to go learn from. And Alice's story is a good indicator of why people get excited about Scrum. The book that was written by one of the co-founders of Scrum, Dr. Jeff Sutherland, has the subject, the title, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. I'll admit it's what hooked me initially. I'm an Enneagram 3 type A, and as I was debating with my spouse what it was we were going to listen to on a long road trip, when he suggested this, I was like, yes, absolutely. But hold on, we're nonprofit professionals. We don't need any more work. We have plenty of it, right? That's why at Agile and Nonprofits, what we say is the art of creating twice the impact in half the time. That's what we're here for, to achieve our organization's mission and vision. Yet there's a nagging something in these titles and in the tagline, like, oh, maybe it's a second elephant in the room. It's kind of a crowded room at this point with the elephants. When we look at those taglines, it doesn't mean that your fundraising team should now be working twice as much. No. It means that you're decreasing time spent on the things that don't create impact, that don't deliver mission value, and you are increasing time as a team spent on those top priority items that bring the highest mission value. Maybe you say, what's mission value, Diane? Well, business value is what for-profits talk about, and that's about the dollars and cents. Mission value gives freedom to your nonprofit to think about, what is our mission value? How do we measure that? So that's why we like to use mission value there instead of business value. So when we're talking about increasing the impact of your fundraising efforts, whether you use the Scrum framework or you're in a scaled setting or you're trying just little bits of Agile values and principles in your work, what is it that we can do so that maybe we set down some of the things that are not bringing mission value to us, and how can we increase the time we spend as a team on those top priority items? As we're doing that, one of the things that we want to focus on is the dynamics of our team. I'd like to know from you in the chat box, when was the last time you were asked at work if you were happy within your team? Not within the organization as a whole. If your team and the organization are not the same thing, but I'd like to know, give me a unit of time. When was the last time that you were asked at work if you were happy with your team, happy in your work, or what was your level of happiness? Any question related to happiness and team. Okay, oh, I'm seeing a lot of nevers. I did see one that said yesterday. I'm guessing that might be an Agile team if it was yesterday. 1 month ago, that's a timeline I like a little more. Okay. Maybe a year ago, a few months ago, a few years ago. Okay. I'm not surprised. It is an interesting question. It's a loaded question. And the reason that some organizations choose to ask that question is because of Sutherland's Law. So Sutherland's Law is referring to Dr. Sutherland, the co-creator of Scrum. And what the data shows is that happiness drives speed. And we're not trying to only increase speed here in our nonprofits, but really, again, back to delivering more impact on mission value. So that's going to be our translation for speed here. If we are a happy nonprofit team, if we are a happy fundraising team, we are, as the data set shows, we are more likely to be creating impact faster together, which, well, that sounds like a win. On the flip side, team happiness, if we're measuring it, if we're watching it, if we're thinking about it in our fundraising team, it's a leading indicator for performance. So it would, if we're watching happiness and happiness is on the rise, we would know that our productivity as a team for creating that impact together should be on the rise. Conversely, if we're seeing that there's some slight decreases or a trend downward in our team happiness, we might be facing some concerns within our team. Maybe, I know Jonna Rogers, one of the 4 grant professionals focusing on burnout in the field, I know that she's here. It might be that there's an indicator that there are some burnout issues starting to crop up within the team. We want to dig in on that idea and make sure that we're protecting each other, that if possible, we are avoiding issues of burnout. So I know many of you said that you have not been asked this question. And I'm not surprised, because if you were to turn to your colleagues in your next team meeting and ask this question, hey, everybody, go ahead and share your number. How would you rate your happiness with the team? 1 to 5. That isn't necessarily a comfortable question for everyone. Might not work. So there's a few different ways that within your team, if the team is open to it, if it's something that folks are interested in trying, you could measure in a few different ways. And so I know this is a great question that Ron has just asked. Is happiness a cause of better performance or a consequence of success? I would say it's both. That both relationships are there, and we like that both are there. So this is something, though, that we can control because we're talking about the team, not the organization as a whole. And the point of asking about happiness is that there's always things we can do to improve together as a team. This isn't something static. Our personalities are all different, our backgrounds, our expectations are all different. So how can we work to be happier with working together? So one of the ideas we could try is about a happiness histogram. And so the happiness histogram would give the ability for someone to walk up to a board and to place a sticky right on the graph where their happiness level is on a scale of 1 to 5. And if they're all the same stickies, sure, maybe you might see someone walk up to the board, but it's not like we've labeled our stickies. We don't know who has measured what for their happiness. Perhaps you're in a digital tool. We have a few retrospective templates that we have available for free download at Agile and Nonprofits. And these are the happiness sections from 2 of those. One of the retrospectives is about what cloud are you on? Like, are you on cloud 9? And so you could measure from like rainy cloud as a 1 to a 5. Also, if you are maybe a team driven by ice cream, as our writing team is, there's an ice cream retrospective, and the way that you rate your happiness, they look like little sprinkles by putting your dots on. We have a lot of fun with ice cream in the team. Not going to deny it. There's a few different options. We can have some fun with it and express some personality. We might, however, though, say that still feels a little, oh, are we comfortable sharing? We're not sure that that feels like it's a natural place for us. We might use a poll where it's anonymous. We can use our Zoom tools for that. We can use an online free tool like Easy Retro where it's anonymous for collecting feedback. We have a scale of options available to us if we wanted to measure happiness. And the reason that we should consider those is if we are, as a member of a fundraising team, thinking, it'd be nice if we were paying attention to happiness so that we were always thinking about the ebb and flow of how we work together. What are ways during a stressful period before a special event or in a high demand time for grants? How can we support each other and be happier in our interactions together? That can be a powerful way to check in. Yes, there's always going to be the work. Yes, we'll always be able to try and improve the work as well, but we're people first. So how can we improve our work together? What this is coming down to, though, the way I'm showing these different tools and the reason you should consider a variety of options, depending on your team, you might not feel comfortable. You might not have that psychological safety to ask that question and feel comfortable answering. So for those of you that are like me and have a shelf of books everywhere you go, if you want to add this one to your reading list, if you're interested in this idea, The Fearless Organization by Amy Edmondson is, Amy is the one who's credited with starting the research around psychological safety. There's been a lot more published since then, but this is a fantastic book that might help you think about what's the way that you're going to approach the happiness conversation in your fundraising team. And to be clear, if you're the one asking this, bringing it up within your team, this doesn't mean anything about your title or where you sit on the organizational chart. Anyone within a team could be the one to say, I think this could be helpful for us. There's always room for us to improve how we work together. What if we tried this? Then we could say, well, what might make you happier? That's a great question to ask. It's not just to measure it and have the data and move on, but to ask each other the question, well, what would make us happier in our next week of working together? If we were a 4.25 on average, what might put us towards a 4.5? My answer is often about, can I have more time to drink coffee and to run? Everybody's going to have different answers, right? What could we do that would make us happier together? Let's set happiness to the side for a minute and let's get into the work itself, shall we? Because there is plenty of it. Yes, Tammy.
Before you set aside happiness, we do have one question about that. So it might be a good time to.
Oh, yes. I thought I had addressed Ron's question.
Sorry.
Part of my response. I hope that's okay. Ron, if you have any additional questions, go ahead and let me know. Yeah, that's great. And it's a good reminder for everyone that I'm watching the questions box. I'm kind of fun like that. And if you type a question in live, I will do my best to answer it within like the next slide or two so that you don't have to wait. So keep those questions coming. So I'd like to think about the work that you're all doing because you're doing a lot of it and you're doing great things raising money to support your mission and your vision. When we think about our plans, wait a second, hold on. I just said in Agile Values that we were going to not focus on plans, rather, we're going to respond to change. True. But if we have a framework of a plan, fundraising plan, grant calendar, strategic plan, now we have clear vision as a team. Where are we headed? What do we think we're going to tackle together in order to achieve the broader goal? So when we think about those big plans, some of the questions that maybe you're already using within your team. Team, what did we accomplish last year? What are some of those big things that we want to do in the year ahead? How could we set our priorities? In fact, this last one, this is where I feel sometimes people stop before they get to this last question. What are our sequentially ordered priorities right now? Let's have a moment in the chat box, shall we? How many of you feel that your priorities in your organization, there's lots of them and it's hard to tell which one is the highest priority or would be the lowest priority? They all feel super important, equal priority. How many of you feel like all your priorities are equal? Go ahead, give me a Y for yes in the chat box or an N for no. Do you feel like your priorities are all pretty much tied for first? Okay, so some of you, I see a handful of no's, which means you understand that sequential order of priority. That's amazing. I see a lot of you that are like, oh, no, like priorities, plural, all equally important. That is not the ideal situation for a team, because if everything is an equal priority, how do we know what to tackle first? So let's talk about how we create a plan that helps us to understand what are our priorities. That's going to give clearer direction to the team so that we can focus on that number one priority. We're going to have more success in getting it done. You know what that'll influence? Oh my gosh, team happiness. It'll be a vicious, delightful cycle. If we think about our plan, often then our plan gets translated to a calendar so that folks can see what's coming up. Grant calendar, fundraising calendar, the order of how we're going to send 10 different appeals over the course of the year, some sort of calendar. It might be that the team has a bit of fun. I like to do it in a very visual way. Lay out a big piece of paper if we're in person, or maybe use a digital tool. There's many of them now these days. They've gotten amazing over the last 14 months. But to just let's visually lay everything out and see if there is an ebb and a flow to our calendar. In fact, did this recently with one organization that was trying to understand where might they be able to do some new things. And the team was like, I don't know. I feel like we're pretty full. So by laying out their plan visually over the 12 months for their fiscal year, what they found is that they actually have two very distinct peaks in their calendar. They were able then to step back and say, okay, so either we should take the pressure off the two peaks. Can we do that? Do we have that kind of control so that it is more of a stable plan over the year? So it's a sustainable pace. Or is that saying, not that people are slacking in the dips, but maybe there are some other ways that we could spend our time so that we're delivering more of that mission value? That's the question that the visualizations like this can bring about. We don't want to see huge spikes within your plan as it lays out over your calendar, because whether it's the big fundraising plan, whether it's about launching the new special event, whether it's about the grant calendar itself, if we see those big spikes or the ebbs and flows, it's indicating one of two things, and we don't like either one. One is that we may be experiencing significant heroic efforts by the team to get the work done during the high points, working late hours, working weekends, things along those lines. We don't like those things. Those decrease team happiness, which ultimately will make it so that maybe we're actually not performing as well together as a team. Those are the things that are going to cause situations that bring about burnout in our field. So we don't like it for that reason. The other reason we don't like it is because in the dips, it's indicating that we might be spending time on things that aren't delivering mission value, which in our fundraising world means, are we doing the things that will generate the most dollars for our organization? Hard to say. If instead we take our priorities and we can see where they all fit in the calendar, now we can have a conversation. Geez, it looks like, pick a month. Let's say it's April. Looks like April is really, really, wow, it's heavy for our team. Team, let's step back. Do we understand our priorities for these items that are related to April? What would we say is our lowest priority? What brings about the least mission value? Sometimes it's hard to pick the number one thing. So sometimes it's easiest to decide what is the lowest priority. Can we stop doing it? Can we move it to a different point in the calendar? Is there someone else that could do it? Those are the sort of questions that we can start to ask each other if we're identifying, seems to be some ebbs and flows. What is the lowest priority in those top peaks within our plan? How could we address it differently? So that would be the way that I would suggest using a visualization like this. What you're really doing, without calling it that, you are creating a product backlog, the first artifact in Sprint. We're just not calling it that. We're using our own nonprofit language that we're comfortable with, creating a fundraising plan, creating a grant calendar. We're making it visible so that we can see it, so stakeholders can see it. And by looking at it, we can talk about prioritization, we can talk about sustainable pace, and use it to adapt the big plan before we get started with work. Now, one of the things that comes up frequently is looking out ahead. What is the right amount of time to look out ahead? Nonprofit strategic plans, 3 to 5 years. That is far down the horizon, right? That's pretty far out there. Fundraising plans, grant calendars are usually focused on 12 months. Within that, we have large projects, but that take less time. A big government grant, launching a special event. Maybe it's a 2 to 4 week, maybe a 2 to 4 month long project. Within that, we are going to talk also about the cadence of sprints. So the short iterations in which we work together. We need to have all of those timelines thought about, able to work with them in our visualizations, in our backlog, because the first big idea is in 3 to 5 years, here's who we want to be as a nonprofit. And then as we get closer to doing the work, we're like, oh, here's the fundraising plan that's going to help us achieve that mission. And then we get closer and we're like, this grant in particular is going to be helpful for us to achieve our mission and vision. And then here's the draft that we're going to write in this very specific sprint that will help us achieve our mission and vision. So we're going to be talking about all of those timelines. They all support each other. And the one that I want to drill into now is, let's look at an individual project. How do we manage a large project? Whether it is one of my favorite state grant processes ever, the New York State Consolidated Funding Application Process. I have no fear saying that out loud. Someone from the state could hear me say it. No fear. It's huge. It takes up our summer in New York every year. And there's always tons of character counted responses and lots of attachments. So we can break out our fundraising project by thinking about our hard deliverables, by thinking about the deadline. That's one way we could approach managing a very large project. We could do the same thing. It's a huge special event. We're going to now have a chocolate gala. We're going to have a chocolate fountain. Chocolatiers will be there at the table to serve everyone. And we could think about all the things we have to do from now until the event so that we can have a great special event with sponsors and the tables and the silent auction. We could break all those pieces of work out and put them visually on the board under the upcoming timeline. That's what a lot of us gravitate towards. But there's another way too that we can think about brainstorming for a large project. So I want to show it to you. And what we're looking at here is a basic structure that relates to what's called user stories. And it's a way that we can document our backlog ideas. It gives us a little more flexibility for some brainstorming, especially if we're not in a scenario where there are very strict deliverables, like what I showed with that first grant example. And so I'm going to walk you through a few ideas, examples of how we might use this idea of a high level initiative, a big project or goal, and how we could break it down into these smaller yellow boxes and then work on it together as a team. If we were to say, for example, that our high level initiative is that actually, wait, it's not about us. Hold on, it's actually about the person we're serving. So, as an individual needing behavioral health services, I want a program that supports my individualized needs so that I can meet my personal goals for my health and well being. This is an initiative about fundraising. Why am I talking about services? Because we are fundraising so that this can happen. So, this is our big initiative. And then we can break down, well, how are we going to ensure that this happens? In fact, we might even put a dollar value to this. For these services to happen, we have to raise $750,000. Right? We could put that in as some of our criteria related to this initiative. So maybe as a fundraising department, you say, okay, so how are we going to do that? Well, we could think about grants, major donors, monthly donors. Cool, okay. I've got some user stories for you here. As a grant maker, I need to understand the impact the program makes so I can decide to award a grant or not. As a major donor, I need to know about the success stories so I consider making a gift. As a monthly donor, I need to see how my ongoing contributions are supporting this bigger initiative. And you could keep going. Maybe, like, actually, we're not worried about all those different donor audiences. Maybe we want to just drill down one level deeper. Maybe we want to talk about monthly donors. And so therefore we want to think about online portals. We want to think about how we get receipted for our ongoing gift. How is it that we are updated on the impact? We could drill down deeper into one of those audiences. The reason that the user story format like this could be helpful is that it can help take your planning and your brainstorming around a big fundraising project, something like a huge annual goal, a capital campaign, the big grant revenue goal that you have been given. Instead of making it about only the numbers, it helps connect us back to who is this for? Who are the stakeholders that we are, one, trying to serve, and then two, interacting with as stakeholders to secure the funding so we can achieve our mission value. So I find this can be a helpful exercise to flip some of the conversation as we brainstorm and think about the work we're going to do. It's an alternative. As I mentioned, the one that is more deadline driven, attachment, narrative, appeal draft, like what are all the things we have to do? Sometimes it's very clear to us and we know what we have to do. Other times, if there's a little more flexibility in the initiative and we have space, this can be a very powerful format. You are, again, creating one of the artifacts. You are creating the product backlog. What are the things that we're going to do? You could, I'll go back one, look at this as a team and say, well, which one's a bigger priority? Are grants, major donors, and monthly donors, are they all the same priority? Should we as a team, do we have to just split our attention across these three? Or is one a higher priority for us to spend time on? Which would be the first, the second, and the third priority? They will all still be addressed, but which would be the first and the most important for us to address? That way, as you start to think about the work that is underneath it, more like the monthly donor stories that we drilled down to here on this slide, now you'll understand, well, where does this work fit against the major donor work, against the grant maker work? Was this the first, the second, or the third priority? That can help us as a team think about the flow of our work. I'm going to take a peek before we get into facilitating. I want to see what we've got for some questions. And I see that Karen's, when we think about sequential, talking about the order for priority, is sequential the most important criteria for prioritizing? So Karen, my point in talking about sequential is that each team, each organization will have different priorities that they use, or a different criteria, I should say, for how do they decide what is the most important thing. Is it going to be about the dollar raised? Is it going to be about what leads to new relationships, new collaborations? Every organization will have different criteria that they would apply. But regardless of the criteria being used, the team should understand this is the number one priority for our team. This is the number two priority using those criteria. This is the number three. That when I talk about sequentially ordering, that is why I'm emphasizing that the team should not have to debate. Is this tied for second? This is tied for third. Where does this fit? Leadership for the organization should be giving enough information that we are clear what criteria were used for priorities and what are they. That way we can work our way through them. Awesome. And then I see Jax has asked us a question. When we think about external deadlines, because Scrum sprints, and I know just from who's asking the question, Jax has been working on the Scrum framework within a grant team office. And so we're going to talk about Scrum teams and the Scrum framework and the different events here in a second. So I'm going to keep going, and then I'm going to come back to Jax's question here in a minute. So a Scrum team, that's a team that is focused on one big service goal, product goal, department goal. We could refer to it in a lot of different ways, but the basic point of a Scrum team, we're going to call it your fundraising team, or you could call it your grant team. It is a cross-functional team working towards a common goal. You're like, yeah, you're right. That's a fundraising team, isn't it? So as we think about the Scrum framework, you already have a team, whether it's 3 people or 9 people or what specific titles you have, all fine. But your fundraising team or your fundraising department, for today's conversation, we're going to call you a Scrum team. And so if you're a Scrum team, well, that's one of the roles. So that's pretty cool. We're making progress on having the framework. You've already got a lot of pieces in place. Your Agile mindset is already there. We've seen that value determined and shown through so many nonprofits. You've already got a team. What are we going to do? Some of these events might already be in place. So there are 5 events. I want to present them to you as some options for where you might start, because there are a lot of great examples for how nonprofits are using these. The first is the sprint. A sprint is a consistent length of time. It is a fixed anchor. What it allows is for us as a team to plan on a consistent basis for what work we will commit to and do together in that time. It allows us to gather data about how much work we're doing together, what work in that consistent time box, which allows us to have amazing data and make empirically driven decisions. So a sprint, it might be 1 week, it might be 2, maybe it's 3, max 4. What is important about sprints as a fixed length of time is that we are thinking about what as a team do we create of value in that time. Within that sprint as a team, do we have a draft of an appeal letter within that sprint? Is that something we could create on average every time? Or could we on average have a new grant draft? We end up having different types of drafts of information, of outreach, based on the types of fundraising we're talking about. So you'll know the best answer for your team. What is it that we create that has some value? It's not that it's done, final, and polished, but what are some of the things that we could create that would be something we could get feedback on, that someone could use or respond to? And that's how we'll set our sprint length. There's a great case study about Cosmic, which is a outreach campaign and branding organization that works with nonprofits and municipalities. And the reason that they like to talk about sprints is because before they shortened their sprint length, what they were doing was waiting way too long before they were releasing drafts of these creative materials to their stakeholders for feedback. So they were polishing and editing too far and then getting feedback and having to rework some of their creativity. Sound like that could be something that's maybe happened to you? A grant narrative draft, or an appeal letter, or an annual report, or some other sort of graphic that you were creating for an event? I know I've done it before. Oh my gosh, with grant applications, I'm like, but I don't want to let you see it yet because it's not perfect. Had to let that one go. So the point of sprints is to make them as short as possible so we can create something of value that we'll get feedback on and then continue to iterate. Well, with that soapbox about sprints, the second Scrum event is sprint planning. So if we have a set length of time that we are committing to, hey, look, that's actually me in that picture with a whiteboard and lots of sticky notes. On that board, what we're showing are all the things coming up. What are all the different drafts? The Post-it colors actually mean something to our team. And so trying to plan just far enough in advance that we make sure we have the resources that we need, that we've thought about priorities. Sprint planning is saying, for this next sprint, what as a team do we agree to? Do we commit to based on the priorities for the team as a whole? That's the purpose of sprint planning. We walk away with a goal as a team. What are we going to try and accomplish in this sprint? And what is the work that we have committed to together? That looks different for every team, but that's the purpose of sprint planning. Our third event, it's called the daily Scrum. And once we have set a plan for our sprint, the daily Scrum is a way that teams will come together, check in quickly, 15 minutes or less, to see if there's any impediments, things that might be preventing them from getting the work done together. This is a case study that we love that came out of Data Arts. It's an organization, you might know them for their cultural data profile, but they got introduced to daily scrums when they were in a project with a collaborative partner. So a quick way to check in, and what they found is that it removed huge planning and status meetings from their calendar. They loved it. As a result, others in the organization saw this one project team doing it, and they said, can we do it too? We want in. We like this. Is this going to remove big meetings and help us go faster? Yes, please. So the daily Scrum might be a low stakes way that the team can start to understand how are we progressing, and most importantly, what impediments do we need to try and remove, or do we need to ask for others' help so that we can get our work done? The fourth of the Scrum events, we're in our sprint review. What is your fundraising team creating? Back to that value question, what are you creating that you could showcase, that you could humble brag about, that you could ask for feedback on? That's what you want to be presenting in a sprint review. It doesn't have to be a big formal presentation. We're not necessarily in the conference or boardroom. It might be that there is actually a document or an image that someone's passively reviewing, but where do we get feedback? And then here comes my favorite of the 5 events. And this is a spot where I find many nonprofits gravitate. Many fundraising teams feel comfortable in this space. The sprint retrospective. The sprint review, it's not quite a post-mortem about the work because the work is still going. It might not be the final thing that you would hold a post-mortem on. It's like the little baby reviews leading up to being done. The sprint retrospective, though, is the fifth event. This is inspecting and adapting the team. And it could be tied to that earlier conversation about happiness. When we think about the sprint retrospective, this again ties to that psychological safety piece I talked about with Amy Edmondson's book. But if your team did nothing different, literally nothing different, except to add the sprint retrospective, I hate to make a guarantee. I'm not a gambler, but no, I guarantee that your team will get better together. If you did nothing else from the Agile conversation today, from the sprint framework, or the Scrum framework that I'm showcasing for you, if all you did was try the idea of a sprint retrospective, consistently having the conversation about what went well, what didn't go well, what could we improve together? Not about the work, but about how we worked as a team. If you have this conversation on a consistent cadence, 1, 2, 3, or 4 weeks, if that is the single change that you try in your team, I guarantee that your team will produce impact faster. Occasionally, you might try something to be better, and it's just like status quo, but over time, your team will be better together. Now, the Agile Retrospectives book that I have here, it's again another one here on my bookshelf behind me. It's got a great outline to follow, gives some good perspective on what it means to hold an Agile retrospective. We also have a Agile retrospective toolkit that you can download for free at agileandnonprofits.com. So a good place, either one of those, to help get you started. Now, I could talk Agile all day. Well, maybe I'd take half the day for Agile, half the day for grants. Either way, I want to see what other questions you have. I've been focused on answering questions out of the chat box as we go. Go ahead and get those questions in the Q&A box. I want to make sure you have my email so you can reach out and ask more questions later. Now, but before anyone goes, we have a huge announcement, and it's why I was so jazzed to be together today with the Foundant team. As Tammy mentioned, the monthly webinars that she and the team put on for you, huge range of topics and experts across the field of grants and fundraising, such amazing work. And one of the things and why we love partnering with them is because, well, sometimes we have great ideas that become priorities in our backlog. And today we get to tell you about one. So mark your calendars. On October 8th, we are having a 2-hour, completely free Agile and Nonprofit Summit. It is not a conversation of a bunch of trainers and coaches from the Agile space coming to tell you about what Agile and Scrum are. Rather, it's a showcase of nonprofits like you, coming to tell their stories about their Agile journey. Did they try retrospectives? Were they having a lot of fun with the daily Scrum? What have they tried? They're going to share that with you, with other nonprofits, so that everyone can see if it'll work for them. So, like I said, mark your calendar, save the date, October 8th from 12 to 2 Eastern. The Agile and Nonprofit Summit will be taking place. There's a lot, though, that you can learn at no charge about Agile and other ways that you can ask questions between now and then. That's kind of it's a long way away down the horizon. If you want to ask more questions beyond reaching out to me personally, there's a Agile and Nonprofit Facebook group. There are office hours that happen at least once a month that are free, where you can come ask questions. There's a quarterly book club. There's social media. Wherever you want to ask questions within our community of practice, we are absolutely thrilled to have you. And as I see we've got a question in the Q&A box, what I want to just quick highlight is that if you want to take that formal learning even one step further, I want my Grant Hub group to make sure that you have the best discount code. So if you use Grant Hub, capital G, capital H, no space, you'll get 15% off for any of our webinars or trainings that are coming up. So definitely don't lose that. Let's see what we've got for questions. There are some good ones coming in. Carla asked, what is a Kaizen? Oh, that was a technical word that I had on that sprint retrospective slide. Good eye. A Kaizen, Japanese for change for the better. It is the one thing that a team is going to agree to try the next sprint. So we have a sprint retrospective. We come up with one thing that we want to do that we think will make us better, faster, happier, and we commit to it. That is called a Kaizen. Great question. And then Trudy asked if the idea of Scrum, can it be applied to the entire organization, 10-ish people? Yeah, absolutely. So a Scrum team ideally is between 3 to 10 people. So you're right there at the cusp. I'm thinking of a statewide domestic violence agency that is using Scrum, and they are 9 people. So rather close. So we've actually got a case study. Trudy, if you want to reach out, I've got my email on the slide deck. I'm happy to help connect the dots so that you could even talk to that organization. Excuse me. Absolutely possible. It could be whole org, even up to that size. Yeah. Great questions. Tammy, have I missed any?
No. Well, as you look through, I don't think you have, but if there's any late ones coming in, I do want to take just a second. I know we're up at the top of the hour. So I want to let everyone know that Diane has graciously agreed to hang on for a few more minutes. But if you need to leave, as you leave, please look at that post-webinar survey and give us feedback on what more you'd like to learn on this topic or what your key takeaways were. We really appreciate that post-webinar feedback. And we do, in addition to that Agile Summit coming up in October, excited for that. But in addition to that, we have more monthly webinars as well. For June, we're looking at LOIs and executive summaries. So watch out for that invite as well. And if there's anything else here that came on, I see some more questions came up. Diane, do you have any more? We'll stay on for about 10 more minutes if needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to stay on and continue to answer questions. Thank you to everyone that's joined us, though. I totally understand the time box. You may have to go to another meeting. You have more things to do, so no worries there. So Ron, I see your question that you've had some specific Kaizen training where, as it was presented to you, it was an event to identify areas that don't contribute to a goal or waste and how to overcome that. I could see how that would be a way that it was presented. The way the Kaizen's used in the Scrum framework is slightly different than that. As I described it, it's where you're finding one thing to improve about how you work together as a team. But it is based in what worked, what didn't work. And so I can see how finding something that doesn't contribute to a goal, what might be waste in a lean setting, I can see how that would also be applicable for it. And yes, because Kaizen is Japanese for continuous improvement. So within like Scrum framework, it has its origins in lean with the Toyota production system from the 50s. Scrum's been around for 25 years, Agile since 2001. There are some things within the Agile community where one framework is then borrowing from another. And so without knowing the specific training, I probably don't want to go into too much more. I might go down a weird rabbit hole of misinformation. Ron, I'd be happy always to talk more offline to see and learn a little bit more about what you learned, because I think we're all in the same space, right? Those are Agile values that you're talking about there. So if you want to reach out, I'd love to talk more and learn about your experience. Let's see. Oh, Sean, what a question. How would you recommend talking about Agile to leaders who are resistant to change or suspicious of new ways of doing things? Okay, so I am not going to give the full answer myself. Instead, I'm going to refer to a fundraising coach that many of you may recognize the name for. Mark Pittman, the fundraising coach, did a wonderful video. Actually, it wasn't the video he did. He gave it as a keynote at the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference, talking about thinking through how your leaders react to change, how they make decisions, so that you frame the new idea in the right way. And the way that he did it was by talking about the Enneagram. So it's an Enneagram. There's 9 different types of people within that particular personality test. But he equated it to the TV show Parks and Rec. Whether you've seen the show or not, it still was a great keynote. But it does, for some of us that love that show, you're like, oh, that's funny. The point of it is that there are many different ways leaders will make styles or make choices. So if you understand their style, you might, with one leader, and this is why I can't answer you super directly, Sean, with one leader, they might be like, I need all the data. Why would this work? I'm suspicious about new things. Give me data. You would give them all the case studies that we have. You'd be like, here is everything from the Harvard Business Review and from Scrum Inc. and every printed journal we have about why this works in nonprofits. That's how you respond to that person. If it's someone who loves new things, you could say, Scrum's been around for 25 years, but it's relatively new in the nonprofit field. We're going to look awesome to funders if we do this because we're going to be like the first one in our county. Depends on your leader. So thank you, Megan, for putting that link in. The YouTube link that's in the chat box, that is the video of Mark walking through that. He does a much more eloquent job than I did. Mine was the little summary, but fantastic question. Depending on what you think after the video or as you think about it, please feel free to reach out. Happy to talk about it more offline.
Excellent. And thanks to you, we also connected with Mark Pittman, and we have a podcast just from that we did last month where he talked about the Enneagrams as well as other things on how to be more effective as a nonprofit leader and those challenges that you face there. So great information. You've shared so many links and helpful sites and resources with us, and I really appreciate all of these free services that you're offering in our community. This is great. I've seen comments fly by of this has lit my fire on this topic. I've been wanting to look into it. So I appreciate this overview that you've given with so many resources and support and networks for learning more and supporting everyone in that. Thank you so much, Diane, for sharing this with us. And we really appreciate what you do to help nonprofits, both in grants as well as in this agile methodology of how to improve and really balance that workload that can be so stressful to folks in our area here of writing grants with all the deadlines associated with that. Are there any other comments or last questions that popped up, Diane, that you'd like to leave us with?
I don't see any questions in the questions box. What I will say is I'll be keeping an eye on the Compass conversation. I put 2 prompts in there before that I'd love to have you go answer if you're interested, if you're already part of that community or if you join. So happy to keep the dialogue going there or anywhere else that's on the screen. So I appreciate everybody taking time to talk about Agile with me today. Super excited about it. So thank you.
Yes, I'm putting that in our chat, the link to your discussion, but it'll also be in the post-webinar email. We will send a link to the recording, your slides. You also pulled together a nice handout with this information on it. And thank you so much for creating that discount for all of our community to use. So we'll include that as well. Please let us know if there's any feedback or additional topics you'd like Diane or other educational webinars to focus on, and we wish you the best in your fundraising efforts and hope for the best success in that. Take care, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.